Hello everybody. So I don't know about you, but I watched the Book of Boba Fett for the plot. And by the plot, I mean this. And this. And this, and this, and this. So, yeah. Let's talk about the Book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett. Definitely a good title for some of this show. It's pretty bad when, you take a 2-episode detour to basically do another show right before the finale of this show. Yeah. I just don't know what was happening with this season, with this show. I don't know what they were doing here. And I think just watching this show, this season of it, like what it actually ended up being, kind of made me realize, it kind of made me understand my reaction to the trailer we got a few months back a little bit better, because when I watched it, I was kind of disappointed by it. I wasn't really sure what was exactly going on, what was the plot going to be. It didn't really get me excited, and I was kind of like confused, like why did this not get me that excited for this? Like, I thought I'd be more excited with this trailer, and seeing the actual show, I kind of realized, oh, because the actual show doesn't really get you invested or excited in it, and it doesn't really give you a good idea of what is actually happening. Like, it's just really confusing, and I'll just kind of I think I'll just go through the episodes and talk about just why it was really weird what they did throughout it. So the first episode, definitely the first 4 episodes with the whole flashback thing, it was just really weird, because it seemed like they were kind of focusing more on the flashbacks and the main present day stuff, and then it ended up creating this thing where they were competing for for the runtime, and so you would get the second episode is, I think the first and second episode are very, very flashback focused. You get a lot more with the flashbacks in the first 2 episodes, and you don't really get much in the present day stuff. And then in the 3rd episode, they kind of try to play a bit of catch up with the present day stuff and focus very, very little on the flashback stuff. And then the 4th episode is kind of back to being mostly flashbacks, but still doing a good amount of moving the, they have the little bit at the end that kind of moves the present day stuff forward a little bit. Definitely the most that I think any of the episodes had. I think most of the movement kind of happened in the 4th episode, which is kind of really took you to the 4th episode to kind of have this thing where the story really moves forward. That was weird, but yeah. So first episode, you really just kind of, for the present day stuff, you kind of just get an idea of people aren't really respecting Boba Fett as the daimyo. Now somebody sends assassins after him. We're kind of wondering who did that, and that's kind of the extent that this episode takes the present day stuff. And then with the flashback stuff, it's, I have to say, I think the flashback stuff here was really good, where you get to see him getting out of the Sarlacc pit. That was awesome. You see how the Jawas took his armor, and then the Sand People captured him, and you kind of start this plot line where he's going to get, taken in by the Sand People, and you kind of join their culture and kind of become an honorary Sand person. And so I think that worked. I think that kind of plot line that they dealt with in the first 2 episodes, I think worked very well. So gets captured. At first he's just kind of a prisoner, and then he ends up proving himself when he kills the monster. And so they end up going into the second episode, deciding to train him.
Like a panther. Yes?
You get the whole thing with the train, which I thought the whole thing with the train was so awesome. I don't know. I love that. And it was cool seeing him, again, join the Sand People, the Tusken Raider culture, and kind of join their tribe and kind of get them as sort of a family of sorts, and kind of changing his ways. I thought that was very interesting. Of course, the 3rd episode just kinda wipes all that away. It's like, come on, you were setting up this cool thing, and then you're just like, and then they just die. I think really, like, honestly, the second and third episodes, in my opinion, like, they're so weird, because, like, they seem like they actively hate each other. Like, the second episode was made, and it seems like the third episode was made to actively contradict, actively just destroy everything that the second episode did. You know, the second episode, you know, again, the Sand People, getting him into their tribe, and then you also, in the present day stuff, you kind of find out, you know, who sent the assassins. You kind of think it was the mayor, and then you're like, oh no, it was actually the Hutts. There was actually Jabba the Hutt's cousins or something, the twins, and you're like, oh, they actually did it. They're the bad guys here. And then you get to the third episode, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, it was just a misunderstanding with the Hutts. They just, this isn't anything. You know, we're done with that. They gave him a Wookiee, and that's it. And it's like, oh, so what? Like, it was just a lot of, like, back and forth of, like, oh, who did it? Who was it? Was it the mayor? Oh, it wasn't the mayor. It was the Hutts. Oh, wait, no, it was actually the mayor. Oh, it's the Pikes. And it's like, what is happening? Like, just like, you didn't need to do this much of, like, the mystery of who it is. Just say who it is. Just, what are you doing? And so, yeah, that was so weird. What they did there with, you know, making the third episode just kind of retcon the whole Hutt thing, just being like, oh, there was a misunderstanding. And then, of course, again, with the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders, you just kill them off. Like, I think they were there at the beginning, and then he goes to talk to the Pikes, and when he gets back, the biker gang apparently killed them, or so he thinks. Was that reveal in the finale that it was actually the Pikes? Like, I mean, that was supposed to be something where it's like, oh my god, the Pikes did it, the Pikes killed them, and they framed the bikers, and it's like, I don't care, I don't care if it was the bikers or the Pikes, like, you know, because it's like, it's not even like they put a lot of, like, emotion behind it being the bikers, like, because even, like, when he kills the bikers in the fourth episode, it's just, like, a quick thing, like, he gets his ship back and then kills the bikers, and it's like, oh, okay, that's done with. He tied up that loose end that he had to get revenge on them. It's like, okay. And then you kind of just, like, forget about it. You're kind of like, okay, that's over now. He got revenge. And then, like, making this extra thing here where it was actually the Pikes is like, okay, I mean, that's an interesting idea that I think if they had kind of set it up better, it could have been an interesting reveal. But as is, it's just like, okay, I honestly kind of forgot that it wasn't the Pikes. I kind of thought it was. I didn't care about it enough to be like, oh my god, it was actually the Pikes. And then, like, that reveal isn't even, like, it doesn't lead anywhere. Like, it's not like, oh, that's the personal reason why he has to go after the Pikes now. It's like, no, he's going after them anyway, and that's just an extra detail that Cad Bane uses when he's fighting him. With Cad Bane, I'll get to him later. Cool to see him, weird use. Get to that later. But second and third episodes kind of seemed like they were just kind of battling each other. Like, the second episode happened, and the third episode was like, oh yeah, nope. Second episode, everything that the second episode did doesn't matter anymore. And it's like, oh, okay. Like with the Sand People, it's like that could have been an interesting storyline that you could have developed further with him, you know, again, being in the tribe, becoming a sand person, non-honorary sand person, and it's like, that could have been an interesting plot line. And then you just cut it short. And that could have been like when he needs the army later on, the Sand People could be his army. You could reveal that there was one person that survived, and he gets a whole group of, you know, a whole another tribe of Sand People to help him. That could have been his army that he needed later in the show. No, you just kill them off in the third episode. Like, what? And then also in the third episode, they introduced the biker group that he ends up recruiting, that Boba Fett ends up recruiting, with the colorful bikes that look like they're from the Power Rangers. Like, I could have done without all of them. Like, honestly, they really only focused on the one girl. That's who they focused the most on, and even then, she's not even developed enough. Everybody else wasn't even developed, like, at at all. Like, I think, like, all I remember is the girl and the one with, like, the eye, the thing on the right. I think there were two others. I don't remember them at all. Yeah, they just did not do a good job developing them. They just weren't needed. I just don't think they were needed at all. Like, I'm sure they're good actors, but, like, we didn't need these characters at all. Like, why did you include them? They didn't need to be there. Yeah, so just, like, that third episode was really weird. Felt like it was just kind of tearing down the second episode. Yeah, but I'll move on to the fourth episode, which is, again, very flashback-centric, and another thing with the flashbacks that kind of finishes off in this episode is, like, the whole thing where, like, he has to get into the Bacta tank to have these flashbacks, like, when he goes in there to kind of heal, like, in his healing process. I guess he's remembering this stuff, and those are the flashbacks. I don't think that was needed. I think, like, you didn't need to do it every single time. Like, they did it every single flashback. You had him go into the Bacta tank to start it or get out of it at the end of it. Like, I don't think you needed that. You could have just had a flashback. You didn't need to frame it in the Bacta tank. And then it's like, in the fourth episode, of course, when you finish the flashback there, he gets out and he's like, oh, he's all healed. And it's like, okay, that's cool. It's cool, we're done with the flashbacks now. We kind of focus on the main story that you kind of have been somehow not developing, not giving enough time, but also going really slowly. Like, you were, like, kind of like such a weird, like, situation, because, like, this whole show just kind of seemed like, at the same, like, it was on the one hand kind of dragging it to get to the point, but on the other hand, it seemed like it was rapidly going through stuff and not giving enough time to develop things. I don't know how that works. I don't know how you'd be taking things really slowly, but also not develop anything. I don't know how they managed to do it, but they did it. I don't know what happened. I think ultimately, when they started this, they kind of knew where they were going with the season, the cool stuff they wanted to happen at the end with Mando and Grogu and Luke and Boba Fett riding a Rancor and Cad Bane showing up. They, like, knew the cool stuff they wanted to happen towards the end of the season, but they were like, I don't know how to get there. I just don't know how to, write 4, 5, 6 episodes to kind of get to that point. And so instead of trying to figure it out, they were just like, well, we'll just do stuff. We'll just create this whole mystery of who actually sent the assassins. We'll throw some flashbacks in there to kind of increase the runtime, and there you go. like, I'm honestly certain if you take everything that happened in the present day stuff in the 4 episodes, it would be the length of one episode. I truly believe it would be the length of one episode. Maybe it would be like an hour long, a little bit over an hour long, but I think it would be the length of one episode. I think they just use the flashbacks to kind of increase the runtime to make it 4 episodes, but I think if they just used the present day stuff, it would have been an episode. And this would have been just like 4 episodes in total, with 2 of them being Mandalorian episodes. So it would have been really 2 episodes total of present day stuff that are actually Boba Fett. It's ridiculous. So 4th episode, well, it was cool to see, like, kind of the connection to Mandalorian with him, finding Fennec and kind of seeing how he, brought her to the guy who gave her robot parts and stuff. That was cool to see. It was cool to see them infiltrating Jabba's palace to get his ship back. It was cool to see them going back to the Sarlacc pit, even though it was kind of weird that, like, why did he think his armor was there? It was just kind of a weird thing. Like, obviously, like, we know his armor's not there, but you're kind of confused on why he thinks that. I guess because of how delirious he was when he got out, he kind of was like, oh, my armor must still be in the Sarlacc. I don't know what was up with that, but he goes to Sarlacc to try to get his armor back. We get to see the bomb thing that kind of goes, wow. I think that they know people love that, so anytime, like, if you're making a Boba Fett show, you have to have that happen at one point, so it was really cool that they had that happen here. Now that I think about it, I don't think Slave 1 was used at all in the present day stuff. I think this episode, in the flashbacks, was the only time Slave 1 was used. Yeah, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, and there was another time that Slave 1 was used in the present day stuff. I don't think there was. I think this was the only time it was ever used, was in this flashback in the 4th episode. Why? How did that happen? How did they make a Book of Boba Fett show and not have Slave 1 at all, except for one episode in flashbacks? Like, he had it the entire time. I mean, I guess he was always on Tatooine, so he didn't really need to use it, but, like, you could have flown places with it. Yeah, they never used it. That's kind of weird. But, yeah, so, but that was cool, seeing that used, that bomb used, on the Sarlacc. And then, we kind of get, like, his logic behind why he's doing what he's doing. You know, being like, oh, I'm tired of working for people who aren't, you know, who don't know what they're doing. I could run things better, and that kind of sets up why he's doing what he's doing at this point in the present day stuff. And then, of course, you get out of the flashback there, you're like, oh, he's healed with the Bacta tank. And he gets all of, like, the different crime leaders to come, and he makes a deal with them to stay neutral and not, you know, go with the Pikes, which of course they completely betray him in the last episode. That was kind of expected, but yeah, at least in this episode, he's like, all right, I'll make a deal, just be neutral, you know, and so they're like, all right, we'll do it. And of course, they betray him, and then he's like, we need muscle, and the Mandalorian theme starts playing, and this is where the show turns into the Mandalorian for 2 episodes, which those episodes were great. Those episodes were amazing. But at the same time, why were they on this show? At the same time, this is supposed to be the Book of Boba Fett, not Mandalorian Season 3. But apparently you didn't have enough story for Book of Boba Fett, and so you decided to take some story from Mandalorian Season 2 and throw it in there. Like, what? It was cool, nevertheless, to see Mando. I mean, when that 5th episode starts and he walks in, like, the show immediately becomes, like, a million times better. Just with him walking in, you're like, this is so much better. This one moment is so much better than everything we got in the past 4 episodes. Like, just seeing Mando back.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
And seeing him with the Darksaber, and seeing him, you know, come face to face with the armorer again, and have to say that he took off his helmet. I guess I should have said helmet to helmet instead of face to face earlier. But you know, she asks him, "Have you ever taken off your helmet?" And he has to be like, "Well, yeah, I did. You know, that is something that did happen towards the end of last season, Mandalorian. That did happen." So she's like, you're out of here. You can take the Darksaber still, though. You know, even though it's supposed to be a Mandalorian thing, and I just said you're not a Mandalorian, you could keep the Darksaber. It's like, okay. Seemed like she should have taken that back if he's no longer a Mandalorian, but I guess since he still won it, he gets to keep it. But yeah, definitely, again, cool to see Mando with a Darksaber. Awesome. Then it was cool to see that Republic ship that you know, he ends up fixing with the lady that's on Tatooine, Pelimoto, I think is her name. And so fixes that. That was really cool. And seeing him flying around in that, very cool stuff. Very cool episode. And then at the end of it, Fennec shows up as a cameo on a show that she's supposed to be one of the stars of. She is a cameo, and she's the cameo, not Boba Fett. Boba Fett doesn't even show up. The guy who's in the title character of the show, he doesn't show up in this episode of his own show at all. And the secondary character is a cameo. Like, what were they doing? Like, what? It was a cool episode. It was cool seeing Mandalorian again. But you didn't even include your title character, and you made your secondary character a cameo. What is happening? So, she shows up. She's like, Boba needs your help. He's like, all right, I gotta go see Grogu first. And when that first happened, I was like, okay, so either we're gonna see Grogu next episode, or more likely it'll be like he goes and then comes back in the finale. Like, we'll have an episode that's going back to Boba Fett stuff, and then the finale will come back and be like, oh, I saw Grogu, and we're gonna kind of see like what actually happened there in season 3 when that comes out. But no, they actually show him in the next episode, and they don't just show him. I mean, we get a ton of stuff here. Like, it's just crazy. Like, we get immediately the Marshal back. The Marshal, awesome. Cad Bane. Yeah, that was so cool to see him, his return. Then, see Mando, he's going to see Grogu, who's with Luke now. Immediately, when we see R2, I'm like, oh man, they're gonna do it, aren't they? They're gonna show us Luke. They have to. They're gonna. And they did. And oh man, the CGI for Luke in this episode was phenomenal. Like, I don't know what happened. Actually, I do kind of know what happened. I guess they hired the guy who posted the video on YouTube where he fixed the deep fake of Luke from the end of season 2. He made a deep fake version of it to kind of like improve upon it, and so I guess they hired that guy to do the CGI or deep fake or whatever for Luke here, and it looked phenomenal. Like, again, like at the end of season 2 of Mando, it didn't look that good. It was good enough to see like, okay, it is Luke, but at the same time I was like, it doesn't look that good. It looks like it was from like a video game or something. This one here, it looks like they like time traveled and got Mark Hamill from the 80s to come and be in this. Like, it looked amazing. Like, just the whole time I'm like, like the whole time watching it, it never got old seeing him. I was just like, how? It's him. It's still him. It's him later in the episode. Every single scene, it looks like him. It never drops in quality. I think there's a few times where like maybe him like talking doesn't look as good, but it's still like, it's just nitpicks. It's just looking closely at it to try to find things. Like, it looked phenomenal. Then of course we get Ahsoka. So cool to see her again. We get the test at the end of the final episode, the choice Grogu has to make, whether he picks the Mandalorian armor that Mando had the armor make for him, or Yoda's lightsaber and continue his path to the Jedi. He needs to let go of his attachments to Mando, and so he has to choose. He has to make his choice. And that was another thing that I wasn't expecting them to follow through with in the finale. I'm kind of happy that they did. I'm a little bit like, I wish they kind of saved it for later, but it's cool that they did. I like that they didn't make us wait to see what the choice was, but I kind of was assuming that they weren't going to show us it, and they were going to like wait till Mandalorian season 2 and have him like show up with whatever item he chose, and that would symbolize the path he chose. And what I was kind of predicting was Mando would go to see him at some point in season 3, and we'd see him with Yoda's lightsaber, and you'd kind of be like, oh, he chose the Jedi path. And then later he'd switch and he'd choose Mando, and then you'd see him with the Mando armor, and I think I kind of thought they were going to do that with it, but instead they just kind of, in the finale, they show him again, and he has the armor. So he chose Mando over Luke. So yeah, so that was cool that they made that choice. It does... See, my issue with it is that they took a plot line that could have been really interesting for a Mandalorian season 3. That could have been a good plot line where, Grogu is having to choose between, going with Mando or staying on the Jedi path. And maybe throughout the season, he's kind of struggling with, maybe he chooses the Jedi path, but he still has the attachments, and he's kind of struggling with having that choice made. And then it's also, you have Mando, realizing that he can't, that Grogu is so important to him, and that the whole season is going to kind of lead up to him getting Grogu back. That could have been a good idea for a whole season arc. Instead, they just, they kind of took it and they kind of compressed it into these 3 episodes, which it was good enough. It's really cool to see Mando and Grogu back and see that they, they're reunited in the finale, but at the same time, it's like, it could have been a cool Mando season 3 plotline, and now I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? Like, because now it seems like we're done with the Jedi stuff. Like, I feel like, how are you going to, like, he chose Mando. There's no more Jedi stuff. So, I don't know how you're really going to connect it with that. Now, maybe that's kind of their plan, because, if you do the Jedi stuff, you have to show Luke more, and if you have to show Luke more, then you have to do the CGI again, which they did amazingly, but it's like, they probably don't want to have to do that, like, if they don't have to, so they probably were like, we'll do it for this one episode, make it really good, and then we'll just have them go, so we don't really have to do that anymore. I'm sure they'll show Ahsoka, continue to show her in Mando Season 3, but, yeah, I guess we're kind of done with the Jedi stuff, which is kind of sad. I think that could have been an interesting storyline that could have been explored a little bit further, but it's fine. And then, of course, the other big thing in episode 6 was Cad Bane finally in live action. And I kind of feel like Cad Bane in this show was kind of used in the same way that Kingpin was used on Hawkeye, in the sense that you're kind of like assuming that the viewers know of him before. Like, that's kind of why it's interesting to see him back. Because, like, with Kingpin, it was cool that, he's the version from Daredevil, and you're kind of connecting Daredevil with the MCU finally, since it was kind of always, like, questionable as to whether or not it was really canon in the MCU, and now seeing Kingpin in MCU thing that's very, very connected clearly to the MCU, bringing Kingpin from Daredevil in was a really cool thing, but at the same time it wasn't really introduced until the very end, and so you kind of it was kind of like, okay, he's cool, he's there, we didn't really get that much time with him, you kind of have to have that prior knowledge for it to really, like, sit in. And then they fake kill him off at the end. Like, literally. That's what they do with Cad Bane. That is exactly what they do with Cad Bane, except I think with Kingpin, they kind of, like, hint at him more throughout the show, whereas, because in Hawkeye, you have Clint being like, oh, the big guys can get involved, and eventually that's revealed to be Kingpin. Here, it's not really even hinted at all. It's just kind of like he shows up at some point, and, he shows up at the end of the 6th episode, and it's like, okay, he's here now. That's cool that we finally get a live-action Cad Bane, but it's like, it would have been, I think, much more interesting if they had introduced him sooner, especially, like, with, I guess, the connection he has with Boba Fett, with I think he, like, trained him and stuff, so, like, that could have been an interesting storyline that could have been shown way earlier to kind of, develop that conflict more. That's kind of the issue that this whole show has, is not developing their conflicts, their storylines enough, while at the same time dragging them out. It makes no sense how they did that, but they apparently did it, and so yeah, I think they should have introduced Cad Bane way sooner, and, probably, like, at the end of, like, the 4th episode. I think that would have been a good time. At the end of the 4th episode, introduce Cad Bane. Of course, you have to, like, shift some things around, but, yeah, like, introduce Cad Bane at the end of the 4th episode, have the next 2. Don't make them Mandalorian episodes, okay? Like, it was cool to see that they were Mandalorian episodes. They were awesome, but, like, just everything that happened there could just be in Mandalorian Season 3. So yeah, so don't make the Mandalorian episodes. Treat the next 2 episodes as developing the storyline more and actually showing the connection. So for people who haven't seen Clone Wars, who haven't read the comics, who don't know who Cad Bane is, you kind of fill them in. Instead they're just like, yeah, he's here now. It's cool. He's from Clone Wars. He's from this other stuff. You know him. Awesome. Live action. And it's like, okay, but like you should have developed it more. I don't really feel the, you know, like the only reason I feel anything from this is because I know who Cad Bane is. I feel like if I didn't, I would just be like, who is this guy? You know, I'd just be like, what was the point? And yeah, so that brings us to the finale. Well, I guess the other thing that happens at the end of that episode is he shoots Cobb Vanth, and you're supposed to think he's dead, which of course, you know, why would they kill Cobb Vanth off as soon as they, you know, finally bring him back in here? Like, why would you just kill him off immediately? Like, for some reason, like, Marvel and Star Wars love to do that, where they're like, just kill characters off, and they're like, oh, they weren't actually dead. And it's like, just keep them alive. Like, you don't have to kill all these characters off, because then you have to write in a way for them to be alive. Like what they did, like, you know, again, related to Kingpin. They brought Kingpin back, and then you had Echo shoot him at the end, but you had it happen off screen, so he's probably not actually dead, because it wouldn't really make sense to have him be killed when you just bring him in. So it's like, it's just like, just don't do it. just have them still be alive. Like, then, because, like, why are you writing that in? So now you have to write something to retcon that. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, so they kind of fake kill Cobb Vanth. Of course, in the post-credits scene of the finale, we see him in the Bacta tank, getting robot parts now. So that'll be cool to see what that turns into. But yeah, so getting into the finale, it was a lot of fun, I think. Like, there was so many moments that were so awesome that I was like, this is cool. This is good. No, it's so awesome to see Mando and Boba Fett with their jetpacks shooting all of the pikes, teaming up. That was awesome. Of course, you know, for some reason they're like standing in the middle of it. Like, why are you just standing there getting shot? Like, yeah, you're wearing Beskar, but it's like, you just get some cover, guys. Like, why are you standing in the middle of all this? But it was still cool, nonetheless, to see that. Cool to see Boba Fett riding a Rancor, fighting robots. I mean, come on. Like, how could you not say that is awesome? You got Grogu back. You got him reunited with Mando. I think I combined Mando and Grogu to get Mando. But yeah, so you get Mando and Grogu reunited. Great moment there. You have this moment where Grogu goes up to the Rancor when it gets loose, which, okay, I'll talk about what I was about to say in a second, but I'll continue with the Grogu stuff, because that's what I'm talking about here. You know, he, you know, calms it down and puts it to sleep. That was an awesome moment, but with the Rancor getting loose, like, I don't know, that's one example of just, like, just stuff was happening. Like, just, like, they just had stuff happening here, and they were just, like, there was really no, like, method to any of it. It was just, like, just things happening. You're like, oh, we'll have, them fighting the Pikes, then we'll have these robots show up, and then we'll have him riding a Rancor, and we'll have the Rancor get loose, now they have to fight the Rancor, and it's just like, there's too much happening. And it was like so much happening with varying degrees of interest. Like, obviously the Mando and Grogu stuff was cool, obviously Boba Fett, again, riding the Rancor was cool, and you're invested in that stuff. Of course, with the Rancor thing, could have been developed more. Like, it seemed like they were going to kind of have that be a thing throughout the season, was him, you know, connecting with the Rancor. It just kind of, you know, he gets the Rancor, you kind of forget about it, and then he's riding it here. Still cool, but could have been developed. Seemed like a storyline that was going to be developed a little bit more. Of course, having 2 Mando episodes kind of shorten your ability to do that. But yeah, you know, that stuff was awesome. It was interesting. I was invested in that stuff. But then you get to the stuff where there's, like, you know, the group of bikers with the colorful bikes. You know, anything with them on screen was just like, I don't care. Like, I mean, again, like, the actors aren't bad, but, like, the characters don't need to be there. I'm not interested in them. You didn't need to add them in here, so I really just wasn't invested in anything involving them. It was cool to see the people of Freetown coming to help, but at the same time, it was like, I don't really know the characters of the people of Freetown besides Cobb Vanth. So, like, if you had Cobb Vanth show up, that would have been interesting. But having the people of Freetown is just cool as like the idea of them coming in, but not really like actually seeing, you know, them doing stuff. Like you could see, like you don't need to like focus on, oh, what are the people of Freetown doing during the battle? Like, no, you just have them in the background fighting while you focusing more on Mando and Boba and Fennec and Grogu and everybody. So yeah. Yeah, it was just a bunch of stuff happening that they were just throwing in there. Like they knew the epic moments they wanted to have. They just, again, didn't really know how to get there. You know, didn't really know how to develop everything in the, you know, prior in the season to get to this point. So they just were just like, well, we'll just do stuff and then say we're at this point. You know, like they have the crime lords turn on Boba, the ones who at the end of the 4th episode were like, we'll stay neutral. They are revealed to have turned on him here. Which, when you think about it, because we get 2 Mando episodes, it's basically just they say they'll stay neutral and then immediately betray him. Like, that's, if you're just looking at the events of the story, those are pretty much immediately consecutive things that happen. They say they're going to be neutral and then immediately betray him. Like, you didn't even develop it. You should have developed that more. You should have put them saying they're neutral earlier in the season, so that way you could develop it, so then when they do betray him, you feel something. Instead, it's just like, oh, nope, they just betrayed him. But, again, there's a bunch of cool stuff that happened in this episode, like Boba Fett versus Cad Bane. That was a cool fight. Of course, they fake kill Cad Bane at the end of it. Like, why did you do that? You didn't need to do it, but okay. Sure, he's dead. No, he's not. And then Fennec kills the Pikes, which is like, it should have been Boba Fett. Like, why was it not like you set up this thing like, oh, they're the villains and they killed the Sand People and he's gonna get revenge on them. But then it's Fennec who does it. Like, it just like, and it's again like it's the same thing with when Boba Fett takes out the bikers who he thought killed the Sand People. It's just like a moment that happens that you're like, oh, he gets revenge. That's it. Not a big moment. You don't really get to have the emotion of it. It's just he does it. Same thing here. It's just they kill the Pikes, and Fennec kills the Pikes. That's the thing that happens here. We had to do it. It's there. It's an event that happened. No emotion, no weight to it. Even though you felt like it seemed like it should have had emotional weight. That, oh yes, they're killed. She killed the Pikes. She killed the crime lords who turned on him. No, they just were just like, yeah, she killed them. They're defeated. Victory. And yeah, so apparently they win, and Mando and Grogu fly off. We get a little cute moment with them where Grogu's, you know, knocking on the glass, wanting him to go into hyperspeed, or whatever that is. I don't think it's hyperspeed, but whatever, like the turbo thing on his ship is, his new ship. You know, that was a nice moment there, and they fly off into Mandalorian Season 3, which I think, again, like, it kind of like, what they did with them here kind of gets me a little bit worried for Season 3 of Mandalorian, because it's like, oh, so you kind of used your plot line that could have been happening in Season 3, but you kind of did it here in this 3-episode span of time. Like, you could have had this thing that could have went on for 8 episodes of next season, but instead you just did it for 3 episodes. Again, cool to see Grogu and Mando reunited. I love to see that, but it's like it could have been a good storyline for Season 3, and you just use it up here as a thing that you're going on as a detour from the main Boba Fett stuff. Like, you could have just not included this at all. Had 2 episodes that were actually Book of Boba Fett episodes instead of Mandalorian episodes to kind of develop that story more. Again, I love the Mandalorian stuff that they show, but it's like, it would have been better if they just saved it for Season 3 and focused on the show they're actually making. It was just, I don't know what they were doing here. I have no idea what happened, why this ended up being such a mess. But it ended up being, seriously, a mess. A lot of fun things happen. No doubt about that. Seeing him with the Sand People was cool. The whole train thing is cool. Seeing him infiltrate Jabba's palace and get Slave 1 back is cool. Seeing him use that blam bomb on the Sarlacc pit is cool. Seeing Mando back with the Darksaber is cool. Seeing Grogu and really awesome CGI Luke and Ahsoka and Cad Bane and Cobb Vanth is cool. Seeing Boba Fett riding a Rancor is cool. But they just dropped the ball on the storyline that they were actually telling and took a weird detour to Mandalorian Season 3 in the middle, or like in 2 episodes right before the finale. What was happening here? Yeah. This is a show that I wanted to be really good, and it could have been really good. But for some reason, they just didn't know how to actually develop the story that they were actually making. It just seemed like, yeah, everything was just underdeveloped, but at the same time dragged on for way too long. Again, I still have no idea how they managed to do that, but they managed to make a storyline that was underdeveloped, yet was really slow and dragged on. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett. Please comment below yours, and remember to give this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and maybe check out some of my other videos. And with that said, that's a wrap.